Okay, so starting with the first chapter, which talks about Introduction to IBM Cognos Analytics Administration. So in this chapter, we will be talking about various administration tools which are available. So we'll talk about IBM Cognos and Analytics Enterprise components. So various components which are available. We just talk about in general about IBM Cognos Analytics and role of administrator in relation to administration and workflow process. So administrator is not only doing day to day. He might be tasked with initial planning. How many servers do we need? How many dispatchers do we need? Based on the workload we have, based on the concurrent number of people who will be accessing this environment. So there will be planning stage involved, then there could be installation involved, then configuration, then day-to-day work. So there is a workflow process which is there. You may be responsible for doing all of it, or you may be responsible for doing only a part of it. But we will discuss the workflow. Then role of Cognos administration and Cognos configuration. So these are two distinct components which are used for you can say administering IBM Cognos environment. Certain tasks can be done in configuration and others are done in administration. Analytics components. So IBM Cognos Analytics is a big tool. So there are various components. As Sharon was saying, she is going to be doing administration. She is supposed to do framework manager modeling and then create some reports also. So those are different tools. Administration console, as you see under the web part of the environment. So there is consumer, author, and administrator. All three interact to the environment using the web. It is a zero footprint installation. So for doing any work on the web, you do not need anything installed on your own machine. So through the web, you will be able to do administration, which is the bigger square box on the right side. Consumers would be using and running reports, looking at the output through IBM Cognos Viewer. They can use Cognos Workspace to create dashboards for themselves, or they can create dashboards using personal files. And they are also able to do authoring of reports, which could be done using various studios. So authoring is a new name for Report Studio. Those of you who have got experience with Cognos 10.2.2, 10.2, or 10.1, they would know this tool authoring as with its old name Report Studio. We no longer call it Report Studio because Report Studio and Workspace Advanced, which were two tools in up to Cognos 10.2.2, have been merged into one called authoring. So we just now call it authoring. And there are other studios which are now called legacy options: Query Studio, Analysis Studio, Metric Studio, Event Studio, and Power Play Studio. These are for creating different type of reports. Query Studio for ad hoc querying, Analysis Studio for creating analyses, which can only be used, which can only be created using a dimensional package where you have arranged your data in dimensions and levels and hierarchies. Metric Studio is an application for creating scorecards. Event Studio, you can capture events like some data changes, some report running, report succeeding, report failing. So various type of events can be captured and tasks can be done based on the events. Power Play Studio and Analysis Studios are very similar, but Power Play Studio only works with Power Play cubes or Power Cubes for that matter, which are pre-created cubes. Analysis Studio can work with Power Play cubes as well as DMR packages, which is dimensionally modeled relational packages, whereas Power Play Studio only works with Power Cubes. So that was the web component. Personal files can be used to create data modules or can be also used with IBM Cognos Analytics packages. The middle layer is the modeler layer, where all the modeling tools are. Framework Manager, Dynamic Cube Designer, Transformer, and Matrix Designer. They're all modular tools, and all modular tools are Windows-based, and they do need to be installed on a desktop. They're not web-based. But even if they are installed on the desktop, they would need to know the location of the server URL because they do need to publish the packages to the server. So in the configuration, we will configure the web URL of the environment. And you will see that we will do that once you do the installation. You would see that where the configuration is done. At the bottom of all the three layers is the data, where all the data resides, whether it is dimensional data, relational data, personal files, or flat files, or any other type of data source. But you see in the middle, there is a blue database called IBM Cognos Content. It is colored in blue because it is a part of the Cognos environment. And there can be only one IBM Cognos Content store and everything which is in your environment. Whether we talk about reports, we talk about security, we talk about any authentication, any authorization, any outputs, all is stored in IBM Cognos Content Store. And that is the heart of your environment. If your content store goes down, your environment is down. Regardless how many dispatchers you have, how many servers you have, if your content store is down, your environment is down. So it is imperative, it is crucial to take the backups of the content store regularly. Administration workflow. So we see there are various stages: planning stage, installing, configuring, then administering. So administering is the stage which is ongoing. Once it is installed, it is settled down, people are using it. Still, as an administrator, you will be ongoing. Day-to-day work will be in the last stage. So planning is right in the start. So once you are planning to get a server up and running, you will do the planning, and in the planning stage, you will discuss about various options which are available. So architecture, installation and configuration options, performance variables, multilingual requirements. So you look at the requirements, how the environment is going to be used. And installation, whether you install on single server or distributed installation. You will again decide based on the factors whether you should go in for a single server installation or you should go for distributed installation. That will depend upon what kind of environment you're trying to bring on. Configure IBM Cognos Analytics. So you will configure the servers to know the dispatcher URLs for other servers if you got multiple. And you will also configure security. Once you configure security, you will configure capabilities of users, you will configure various user groups, and make sure that the users, based on the access they need, are placed in the right groups. The last one, administer IBM Cognos Analytics. You will be administering the servers, looking at the tuning parameters, looking at the performance of the dispatchers, then creating backups. So you can create a backup of a complete environment by doing exports. You can also do backups of the databases. The content store database can be backed up. Activities and schedules, you can monitor ongoing basis what activities are currently running. And if any user is getting any error, you will be able to see that from activities and schedules. Any users who have created schedules, how often they're running, are they taxing the system too much? You will be able to look at how many activities are supposed to run at a particular hour on a particular day. Data connections. Administrators are usually tasked with creating data source connections. Authors or consumers are not able to create data source connections. Deployment would be if you want to export a content from an environment and import it in a different environment. You can do that using deployments. Security for the content. So you want to provide access to a user, or you want to provide access to a particular package to the users. You will be administering security for the content. Analytics content, again, the type of packages, you've got relational packages, you've got dimensional packages. So analytics content would be the dimensional packages. IBM Cognos Administration Portal provides the access point for administration functionality. So once you go to the administration portal, everything connected with administration is available in that portal. Monitor and manage activities, including schedules. Monitor performance using system metrics. So you can check number of failed requests, number of successful requests, percentage of failed requests, how many connections, how many processes during peak period, non-peak period. All that is configurable and can be monitored using IBM Cognos Administration Console. Modify server properties. You can modify what server group this server belongs to. What kind of report processing would this server have? Implement object security. Who can see a particular folder? Who can see a particular namespace? Who can see packages? What they can do with those packages? All that would come under object security. Manage content. So the content which is in your environment, again, managing content would mean you can delete content if you don't no longer need it. You can arrange content in different folders. You can move content. So all that would be coming under IBM Cognos administration. The IBM Cognos configuration, which is a separate place to manage your environment, that is done one initial when you install an environment. You do need to go to IBM Cognos configuration and do the first time initial configuration. You can always come back and make changes to the configuration in case needed, but initial configuration is always required to be done. Modify component properties. So various services which are there, you will be able to configure here what services will be a part of this environment, what services you do not want. Start or stop the IBM Cognos Analytics services. So you are able to start or stop the server. When you do it from IBM Cognos configuration, you get much more feedback. You can always start the service or stop the service from Windows or from Unix or from Linux. There are batch files available, shell files available to start or stop services, but you can also do it from IBM Cognos configuration. If you do it from IBM Cognos configuration, you are able to see much more granular messages coming from the start or stop. Demonstration 1, explore IBM Cognos configuration. In the book, I would be on page number 1-10. And I would switch to the lab. And for the demonstrations, as the name suggests, demonstration is supposed to be done by me, and in the strict sense of the word, you are supposed to watch. But hands-on always gives you more value. So I would prefer that when I'm doing the demonstration, if you can do it side by side on your lab, that would give you a little better hands-on. But if it becomes too much for you to listen to me, watch my screen, do the stuff yourself also, you are most welcome to switch to the watch mode if that gives you more value. But if you want to follow, but you cannot follow, let me know. I can adjust my speed to some extent. Of course, not going too slow, but in case I need to go a little bit slower to help you come along, I would be willing to do that. So let me know if you are having any problems with you, if you're not able to follow me. So on page number 1-10, if you click on Internet Explorer at the bottom bar of your screen, it should open and show you a dialog box where you are able to log in. So we log in as admin. Eric, are you still with us? Okay, that's good. So the password is education1. Once we log in, that is the startup page. And from here, we are able to create reports, we are able to run reports. But in this training, we are going to go to the administration console. So in the sidebar at the bottom, there is manage. So when you click on manage, it opens another bar where we are able to go to administration console. So we click on administration console, the console opens in a separate tab. So you will see there are now two tabs open. One is welcome, other is administration. Now, one word of caution in Cognos 11 or Cognos Analytics, the administration console also allows you to log off, but do not do that. Do not log off from administration console. Always close the console and then log off from welcome page. So you can always close the administration console. Do not log off from administration console. So when you are in Manage Administration Console, we are in the current activities pane by default. Now here we do not see anything because the environment is right now almost vacant. Nobody is doing anything. We are the only person in this environment. So there are no current activities. But in the current activities, look at the filter side. There is background activities, interactive activities. There are two types of activities. If a user decides to run a report in the background, which means he's not waiting for the output of the report, that would show under background activities. But in case I click on interactive activities, I would be able to see all those activities which are currently running. So for background activities, I got more filtering option on the left side. Run by default is any, but I can always filter them by a particular user. If I'm trying to investigate the errors received by a particular user, I can only look at the activities of that particular user. Or under status, I'm able to see pending, executing, waiting, or suspended. So what type of status I'm looking at? Default is any again. Priority, there are 5 priorities, and I'm saying any, but I can look at the activities by a particular priority if I want to. If I click on advanced options, I would see more filtering options available, owned by a particular user, not run by, owned by a particular user, or what type I want. So there are different type of content available. If I click on type, I would see active report, reports, agent, agent view, the various type of activities which are there. So I am able to filter on what I want to look at, or on a particular dispatcher. So right now my environment only has got one dispatcher, but if you got multiple dispatchers in an environment, you are also able to see, I want to see activities only for a particular dispatcher. And once I make changes to the filter pane, I do need to click on apply for the filter to be applicable. Once I click on past activities, I see very similar filter screen. The one is period. So how far I want to go in the past activities. 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, 7 days, 30 days, 365 days. So I can go up to 1 year in the past to see run activities, which is past activities. Or I can also give a period. From what date to what date, I can specifically give a period. So there are preset periods, but I can do my own period also. Again, run by a user, and various strategies, succeeded, failed, or canceled, and advanced options are very similar to the current activities. So I'm able to filter, and on the right side, you see there is a histogram on the top which shows up, and the list of activities shows up at the bottom. And we will be able to switch between different days based on the histogram which shows at the top. If I click on upcoming activities, there I would be able to see all the activities which have been scheduled. What day, what time they are scheduled to run. In the histogram on the top, I would see the number of activities showing up. And in chapter number 5, we'll deal with this in detail, where we'll set schedules, we'll set activities, we will see run activities. So all that would be in chapter number 5, manage run activities. Dynamic cubes, if I click on dynamic cubes, I would see any dynamic cubes which might be in my system. Right now, there are none, but during the installation, you would publish a dynamic cube, and then we'll be able to see the dynamic cube in the environment. So if there are any dynamic cube, you can see them here. Next, we click on system. That shows me the status of the system. So I'm able to see the dispatchers in the system, and I'm able to see the metrics for that particular component. So right now I'm at the system level, so it shows me metrics of the system. But if I click on the server vClass space, I would see that there is one dispatcher under that. That dispatcher name is vClass space :9300/P2PD. So that is the dispatcher which is under the server. If you click on the dispatcher, I see various services which are under the dispatcher. So any of the services, if I click on that, let us say, if I click on batch report service. See, the metrics will change for batch report service. The settings would change for batch report service. The right two panes always show you the properties of the selected objects. Besides each service, there is an actions button, which is a blue arrow pointing downwards. If I click on the actions button, I see what I can do with that particular service. I can start, stop immediately, stop after running and queue processed. And I can also click on set properties to change the properties of that particular service. On the top, you see there is all servers, vClass base, the dispatcher. This is also a navigation bar. So I can click on any one of them to go back to where we wanted to go. So if I click on vClass base, I would go back to the dispatcher level. And if I click the blue arrow besides all servers, I am able to see that all server groups, all dispatchers under services, I am able to filter out on the services I'm interested in. So I would be only interested in a particular service. I can click that to see the services. So if I click on all servers, I'm back to the initial view. So I see all servers and I see vClass base. The scorecard pane, which is on the left side, is the only one which can be maximized. I cannot maximize the metrics pane. I cannot maximize the settings pane. I can only maximize the scorecard pane. So once I maximize, the other two panes are taken away, but some properties are included in the maximized view. So it tells you status, service time, number of processed requests, percentage of successful requests. That is included with the server. So if I click on the change view besides all servers and I click on all dispatchers, now it takes me to the dispatcher level. And I now see that there are different properties which show up. So it shows me current heap size, number of processed requests, percentage of successful requests. It also includes a heap size property in there. So if you click on the dispatcher, I would see the services level view and the properties again change. So I see number of processes, number of process requests, successful requests per minute, seconds per successful request. So these are the metrics which are included with the services along with. And if I click on batch report service, and I am able to again have the actions button besides that. So I want to come back to the default view. So if I restore the scorecard pane, I come back and I see metrics and settings. Now batch report service is selected. In the metrics pane, I see the metrics for batch report service, and settings, I see the settings for batch report service. If I expand the request metrics for the batch report, I see various metrics like current time, last response time, number of process requests, successful, failed, percentage, response time, service time, failed requests. So all these are the metrics for batch report service. So you see the pencil icon besides each of the metrics. These are for setting threshold limits. So I'm able to set the threshold limits, and then I would be able to see an icon besides that particular metrics, so that at a glance I'm able to see where we stand. So if I click on the pencil icon besides number of failed requests, it allows me to set the thresholds. So right now, performance pattern is set to none, which is by default. If I click on low values are good, because I am talking about number of failed requests, it shows me if the value goes beyond the value given in the second box, it would show me a red box. As long as the value is below the value in the first box, it would show me a green. If it is in between these two, it would show me a yellow. But if I click on high values are good, see the icons are reversed. So green goes on the top, red comes to the bottom. If I click on middle values are good, I would see now there are 5 icons. When the value goes above, it is red. If the value goes too low, it is red. In between, it is green. So I want to keep the values in the middle, not too high, not too low. Click cancel. So we did not set any threshold. We will do that also in the manage run activities chapter. If you click on content manager service and expand the request metrics, despite the environment being very vacant, nobody doing much there, I do still see number of process requests is 364 and number of successful requests is 363. So there are so many requests. Why is that there? If I just refresh the matrix, just click on refresh on the top, and we see that number of requests increases. Even the refresh is a request for content manager service, because content manager service is the central service of all the services. Anything which happens in the environment goes through content manager service. So if you click on refreshing again, every time I do that, I see the number of requests increases. I can minimize the settings pane if I want to give the complete space to the metrics pane, or I can minimize the metrics pane to give the complete space to settings pane. So I can do any one of these, but I can keep them both available also if I just restore them. And I can also manually change the height of a window. There should be an icon here. Maybe in 11 they change that. You could change the height of these windows also, but minimizing or restoring is also fine. It shows you both the windows top and bottom. So if I click on expand the tuning parameters for batch report service, if you click on batch report service and expand tuning, I see various tuning properties for the batch report service. Now this one, because we are in the status tab, it is sort of for seeing the values of properties. So here what we see, these properties, I cannot change it in this pane. But if I wanted to make a change, I can do that because there is a set properties icon available on the top of this window. So if I click on set properties, I come to a settings pane where I'm able to make changes. So number of low affinity connections for batch report service during non-peak period. So number of low affinity connections for batch report service during non-peak period is set to 4, and I can come back here and change it to 3. Once I click OK, now I would see in my settings pane under tuning, now it shows me 3. So I'm able to make the change here in this particular pane also by clicking on set properties. Click on schedules. In this screen, I would be able to see all the schedules which are currently active in my environment. Right now, I don't have any schedule, so I don't see anything, but I would be able to. So if you look at the icons on the top right-hand side, I'm able to see the details. I'm able to enable a schedule, disable a schedule, or set properties of a schedule. So we can do all that if we have schedules in our system. Right now, we don't have any. Click on data sets. And on the left side for schedules, in the filter pane, I'm able to filter by a particular user or a status, enable, disable, or priority, and an advanced option very similar to the background or current activities. I can do the filtering. So if I click on data sets, on this screen, I would see all the user data sets which they might have created. So if you create a data set and administrator is able to see who is the owner of that data set, when was it refreshed, what is the maximum file size, the maximum size is 100 megabytes, but we'll see the size and the number of rows in the data set. So in the data sets pane, we are able to see all the data sets which currently exist in our environment. Next, we talk about the security tab. So in the security tab, the first option is user groups and roles. And on the right side, we see there are two namespaces, Cognos namespace and LDAP namespace. If we click on Cognos namespace, I would see under that all the user groups and roles which are available with the Cognos installation. So we see all the groups and roles available here, and I'm able to change the properties of any of the groups if I wanted to. So if I click on set properties for, let us say, Australia group. Oh, not anonymous. If I click on Australia group and if I click on members, I would see what users are a member of that group. So we are able to manage who should be a member, who can be a member of this group. I can take away capabilities. I can add capabilities from any user. So we click cancel, click on capabilities. Now these are various capabilities which are available in our environment. And besides each of the capability, I see a blue arrow, which is actions. And if I click there, I can go to set properties and I'm able to, under permissions, specify who has permission to administration capability. So I can make sure who is able to do administration. But some of the capabilities you see are hyperlinks, others are not. Any capability which is hyperlinked has got sub capabilities under that. So if I click on administration, I would see that there are other departmental capabilities available, and I'm able to again do the same thing for each sub capability by doing set property. So I'm able to do much granular capabilities application. If I click on user interface profile, I got two profiles, professional and express. So professional profile will give them full analytics capability. So they are able to create Report Studio reports and Workspace Advanced reports. But if you give them express profile, they would only be able to use Workspace Advanced capabilities, not Report Studio. Click on the configuration tab. And here we are able to create data source connections. Users, when they want to run reports, they want to create packages, they do need a data source connection. So as an administrator, you are able to create a new data source connection here. You see there is new data source. We are able to create new data source from here. If I click on content administration, from here, we are able to have imports and exports. So under content administration, you see there, all of them are imports because we imported exports to create this lab environment. So there are only imports, but if you look at the icons on the top right-hand side, you see there is new export, new import, cut, copy, paste, delete, user profile. So you are able to create various objects in content administration. If I click on dispatch.
I have a question, Vinay.
Sure.
In the content administration, the screen. So you said what we are seeing all are all exports and imports, or only exports? What did you say?
These are only imports.
Okay. Only.
So you see, they are all imports which are created. This is import. If you click put your cursor over the icon, it tells you if it is an import or an export.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you there are exports, it will be in the same window?
Yes. You can create it in a different folder also, because on the top you see there is a new folder icon. So you can create folders and put exports in a different folder, imports in a different folder also.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So if you click on dispatchers and services, we will see the one dispatcher which we have in our environment. So if you click on the dispatcher, then I would see all the services which are under the dispatcher. But this is a little different. It does not show me metrics and the settings like it was in the status tab. Because we are in the configuration tab, this tab is supposed to be for making changes. So besides batch report service, I got set properties icon on the right side. So if I click on set properties and click on settings, I come back to the same place where I was from the status tab. And we see that the number of low affinity connections for batch report service during non-peak period, we did change it from 4 to 3. We will change it back to 4 here. So we are able to make changes to the parameters either from the status tab or from the configuration tab. If you click on the library tab, that is where all the visualizations which can be downloaded from IBM site can be imported into the environment. So here you see on the right hand side, there is an icon for import visualizations. So if you click on import visualizations, it would say browse and find where your visualizations are. So if I click on browse, I would be able to point to where my downloaded visualizations are, and I can import them into the server. Right now we don't have any, so I click cancel and close again. Now each of the visualization you see there is actions button besides it. So anyone, if I click on the action button, I'm able to delete that or I'm able to download that. If I download, it would bring the zip file to my desktop, which I can then either restore in another environment or I can send it to a different administrator to do that for us.
So what is a visualization?
Visualization is like charts, like graphs, but they are different from graphs. And in Report Studio training, we do show you how to use visualizations. But if users want to use visualization, administrator will be the one who will have to restore them into the environment so users can use them. So that is why we show you in the administrator training, where do you need to restore the visualization? Because users will come to you and say, I need to use visualizations. Can you restore them in the environment? As an administrator, you should know where to restore the visualizations. Next, if I click on multi-tenancy tab, now Cognos environment has got a multi-tenancy capability. So with the multi-tenancy capability, you are able to keep multiple environments in the same environment. Meaning when you create a tenant, all the content in your Cognos environment will either be public content, which can be seen by all tenants, or will have a tenant allocated to it. So once we create a tenant, when we have to give all the content that tenant will be able to see allocated to that particular tenant. So then they are only able to see the content to which they are allocated. They cannot see other content. So if you make 2 tenants and divide all your content between those 2 tenants, any user logs in, he belongs to one tenant, he only sees the stuff which is available to that tenant. They log into the same environment, but they only see the content available to their tenant. So you can have multiple tenants in the environment and each tenant sees their own content to which they have been given access.
Sorry, I'm asking too many questions.
No, that's okay.
In this multi-tenancy thing, so we will have only one content store, and you're kind of, it is like partitioning the disk space kind of a thing.
Right, yes. So it is virtual partitioning of the environment.
So if I have multiple applications, do you recommend us to use multiple tenants? So that they can...
It really depends. It really depends. I mean, for multiple applications, if you start doing multiple tenants, that might not be required, because multiple applications, you can very easily from the security itself say these users have access to this particular folder or that namespace where all the reports for that application are. So for the application level, you may not need to go to tenants. Multi-tenancy is basically for service organizations who have got data for various different companies. They want to keep them all separate. So there you will go for multi-tenancy.
Okay.
If you look at the toolbar, you are able to create a new tenant. You can delete a tenant. You are able to export the content for a particular tenant. You are able to create content utilization info task. You are able to disable a tenant, enable a tenant, and you are able to terminate the sessions of a particular tenant. So as an administrator, you can manage the tenants on this multi-tenancy tab. If I click on mobile tab, we are able to set the mobile configuration. Previously, mobile was a separate install, but now mobile is included in the Cognos Analytics itself. So you just need to configure it. So configure the Cognos server URL here. So mobile users will be able to connect to the environment through their mobile devices like iPads or phones. Pass-through authentication. If you make it on, if they need to navigate through multiple applications, their credentials will be preserved. So they will not be asked to log in again when they're navigating through various applications. Automatic downloads set to on, which means if they receive a report on their mobile device, it will be automatically downloaded to their mobile device so that they can look at that. Displayed sample server. So sample server environment display is on. So once they log in, they would see the sample server, you can say configuration. Multiple maintain application state. So if you make it on or off, if you keep maintain application state as on and they are doing some stuff on the mobile device and then they switch application, when they come back to Cognos application, they would be at the place where they were when they left the Cognos application. So preserve maintain application state will let them maintain where they were. Mobile configuration password can be given here. So users who want to connect to the environment through mobile devices will be asked to give a password, or you can generate mobile configuration code. So you can pass on that code to them through email, and once they click on that code, they would be automatically connected to the environment. So they would not be needed to given the password, etc. You can generate a mobile configuration code. For server configuration, you are able to set various parameters here, like maximum number of pages to store for each report, maximum number of days to store a report. So all these kind of configurations you can do on the server side for mobile access to your environment. Mobile UI configuration, if you want to have a different look and feel for the mobile configuration, you can do it here. But you do need to have the CSS files available. If you click on new theme, you do need to have theme files available. Any questions from this? That finishes the IBM Cognos administration tour. We just looked at what the administration console is, various tabs, what can be done through each tab. We will, of course, be going more into detail into these tabs as we go through the training. So as I said, we do not log off from Cognos administration console. Just close the console, and from the welcome page, log off admin person. That brings you back to the log on page. And demonstration 2, we talk about Cognos configuration. Administration is a console where you will do day-to-day work, but configuration is initial configuration as well as some ongoing configuration if you need to do. So demonstration 2 starts on page number 1-24, and we will look at Cognos configuration. So as we switch back to the lab again, click on Start. Click on Start. Click on All Programs, IBM Cognos 10. Oh, sorry, IBM Cognos Analytics, not 10. And click on IBM Cognos Configuration. That will open the configuration for your environment.
Can you say that quickly again? Start and then what?
Yes. So we click on Start, click on All Programs, IBM Cognos Analytics, and click on IBM Cognos Configuration.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
So once the configuration loads, that actually loads an XML file. And if I click on Environment, this is where we will set the URL for your environment, dispatcher URLs, external dispatcher URLs. All these settings are done on this particular page. Click on Logging. There, local log server port number we can change. If we have got multiple dispatchers, we would be changing the port number for each dispatcher. By default, it is set to logging to be sent to a file. But I can also send logging to a database. So it is type is file, maximum size of log file in MB 10, maximum number of full log files 1. I can set it 2, 3, 4 if I wanted to. So it will keep filling the log file cyclically. Once it fills the last log file, it will start writing the first log file, overwriting again. So I can change the size of the file and maximum number of full log files also I can change. Click on IBM Cognos Services. We see all the services which are available in this dispatcher. So all of these are true. So they are in the dispatcher. I can change any of the services from true to false if I want to take that service away from the dispatcher. So when we are doing a distributed installation, I'm able to say what dispatcher will have what services, what dispatcher will have what other services. So we are able to bifurcate the services between dispatchers if we so desire. Click on IBM Cognos. That is the service for this particular environment. And I'm able to set the parameters here. The type is WebSphere Liberty Profile, which is default, but I can implement a different web server also if I wanted to. So here, maximum memory also can be configured, but default is good enough. Ping timeout, stop wait time, so I can configure those also here. If you click on portal services, that will let us know where the applications.xml file is available. So if you want to do integration between third-party application and IBM Cognos, we can use portal services to create a plug between Cognos environment and third-party applications. So under security, if I click on authentication and Cognos, so the Cognos namespace, there is an option available, allow anonymous access, which in our environment is set to false. When you install your Cognos environment for the first time, allow anonymous access is true, which means anybody can log into your environment without giving a username and password. So the Cognos environment, when initially installed, is completely unsecured. So when you start securing your environment, you must make anonymous access as false. So under security, click on IBM Cognos application firewall. So that is the internal firewall of IBM Cognos, which will encrypt the communication between different components of IBM Cognos. We should leave it enabled. There is an option for disabling it also if you want to. Sometimes people will, just to get away with some errors which are coming, they will disable the Cognos firewall, which is not a good idea. We should keep it enabled so that the communication between various components of IBM Cognos Analytics is always encrypted. Click on Content Store. That is where you will configure the connection parameters to the content store database. So database server and port number, user ID and passwords. If we click there and click the pencil, we will be able to see what username is being used to connect to the content store. Make sure that the user which is being used to connect has got permissions to create tables and enter data into the tables of content store database. You need to have that. So if you click on notification, that is where we will configure the mail server. So if you want to send emails from Cognos environment, if you run a report, you want to send it by email to some users, you need to configure the notification server where you will give the SMTP mail server IP address and the port number, and again, a username and password which has got access to read the mail server and send emails from there would need to be given. And that would be given by the mail server administration from your environment. So whosoever is administering your mail servers like Outlook or Microsoft Exchange, they would be able to give the username, password, and also the server name and the port to configure in IBM Cognos administration. From file menu, I am able to export the configuration. So if I click on export as, it gives me a warning that export is a unsecured operation. So every username password would also be in the unsecured file, unencrypted. So that is why we usually will not do that. So if I click on yes, it'll ask me as an XML file, where do you want to store the exported configuration? We will not export it, so click cancel. From the actions menu, we are able to stop, restart, or start the IBM Cognos service. If you click on edit global configuration, we are able to set global configuration like your product locales, your languages, content locales, currencies, fonts, all that can be set in the global configuration. One important thing under general, you see active archive location file system root. So if you want anybody to be able to save the report outputs to a network location, you need to configure that here. Click on cancel. And from file, click exit. If it tells you to save, click no. That brings us to the end of this first chapter, which was Introduction to IBM Cognos Administration.